I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, City Hall may sometimes make us furious, but at least it provides satirical material for Mardi Gras celebrations. We'll examine Carnival and the political barbs tonight, as well as the civic importance of Carnival 10 years ago. Once Mardi Gras is done, the legislature will be heading toward a special session. We'll examine what's on the agenda and the new leadership. We'll also take a special look at a serious heroin crisis. And our Future Watch segment investigates street begging. In our corner are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Meg Farris, medical reporter, WWL-TV Channel 4. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter. And Stephanie Grace, columnist, the New Orleans Advocate. And we are going to go to Stephanie first because after Mardi Gras, soon will come that special session. How is it looking for what the governor wants to do?
It's going to be a doozy, I got to tell you. The governor is facing a huge problem, including an immediate cash flow problem, because there's a $750 million shortfall in this year's budget, this fiscal year that ends in June. They're also looking at almost $2 billion for next year. But immediately what they need to do is find some cash, which really limits their options because, you know, certain measures they could pass wouldn't take effect and wouldn't actually bring in revenue until down the road, and they need it now. So that's why we're looking at a sales tax increase, for example, which is one of the controversial proposals. Looking at taking some of the one-time money that, you know, remember during the campaign, he said he criticized Bobby Jindal for going after, you know, some of the pots of rainy day funds and one-time money. They're going to have to do it, they say. They don't have a choice. The way it's shaping up, he got a very friendly Senate and a very unfriendly House. So that's the thing to watch. One thing that's happened is that the leadership has been chosen. And I think let's start with the Senate. You really have to appreciate John Alario. And I don't know that everyone really does. He's someone who's been on the political scene for decades. He was in the House. Now he's the Senate president. He is someone who just, people call Lyndon Johnson the master of the Senate and the U.S. Senate. I think John Alario is really the master of the Louisiana Senate. He's someone who has always been aligned with the governor, whoever the governor is. Edwin Edwards he was aligned with, Bobby Jindal he was aligned with. Now he is going to be basically the leader on behalf of John Bel Edwards, even though he was unanimously elected by the Republican Senate.
And he is a Republican.
And he is a Republican. He became a Republican. And he, you know, he is someone who, when you ask him about party, he says, oh, it's not that important, you know. But he really believes in this kind of old school system we have, which is that the legislature should really give the governor's agenda a fair hearing, and he designed the committees that way. He set them up that way so that, you know, he should be able to get his proposals out of committee. Over in the House, it's a completely different story because remember the governor had a choice for Speaker of the House who was rejected. That's Walt Leger, the Democrat. Kind of a more ideological Republican, Cameron Henry, did not get the votes because some of it's a Republican majority, but there was some suspicion that that would, you know, really take things in a very partisan direction. So there was a compromise candidate, Taylor Barra. A lot of people don't know much about him. We've now seen in his committee assignments, it's really as if Cameron Henry were elected. It's really setting itself up to be a very confrontational situation with the governor.
We have Senator Alario saying party really doesn't make much of a difference, but that doesn't seem to be the case with the way the House is moving right now.
And again, you have that, and you know, Alario's term limited. I think once he's gone and his compatriots, the Senate will go that way too. But you know, the world is going in a more partisan direction, and Cameron Henry, who had a big say in the committee assignments, he himself got the Appropriations Committee, which is one of the major committees, which means he gets to, you know, and it's really stacked with Republicans. And, you know, in addition to the Democrats being somewhat marginalized, a lot of Republicans who were more inclined to work with the governor have been marginalized in these committee assignments.
Do you think Cameron Henry politically close to David Vitter?
The feeling was he would have been Vitter's choice for Speaker of the House had Vitter won. The ironic thing is John Alario was going to be Senate President no matter who won.
So does that mean that David Vitter's hand is somewhere in this? Or is
I would say Steve Scalise is the guy to watch because Cameron Henry used to be an aide to Steve Scalise. They're very, very close. So, you know, Steve Scalise came out of the House. He has good personal relationships with Democrats, but he's really probably more partisan in his outlook than a lot of other people, and that's, you know, that's where I think you would see the influence more.
Well, Governor Edwards, through the campaign and then, you know, his inauguration, he was saying, we're going to work together. We're going to work, you know, just get through this together.
Yes.
Is he sort of saying, maybe this is not going to really be the case?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, you see some definite echoes of Washington, where, you know, he has a Republican legislature, so it's in his interest to say we should put party aside, we should all work together. It's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough for him, especially since tax measures have to originate in the House. You need a supermajority for some key measures. There's a real idea that there are going to be real fights over, you know, the stuff that the parties fight about, which is spending money and raising money.
But the governor remains powerful.
He does remain. He has power. Yes, he definitely. For one thing, he can basically say what is on the table for the special session. And this Republican group, which again has been very friendly to his face, has asked him to make it kind of a broad call and put, you know, real systemic reforms on the table for this really 3-4 week special session we're about to have. I think he's probably better off not doing that, because if he limits their options, he has more power to force them to, you know, do what he would like them to do.
When you talk about budget deficits, one legislator said they're concerned if with all these deficits, what if a barrel of oil goes down to $16?
Exactly, and that's what's really happened. I mean, we were, you know, under Governor Jindal, we had a lot of raids of one-time money. We had the huge Stelly tax increase, which we probably couldn't afford, but a tax decrease, I should say. But the big thing that happened that nobody expected was the price of oil dropping, and it's affecting state revenue directly, and it's also starting to hit the job market and the corporate income tax, and it's a really big problem.
Special session.
Next week.
Okay, and
Yes.
what day will it start?
14th or 15th. Is the 15th?
So the week after that.
The week after, yes. I'm sorry, yes. The week after Mardi Gras.
Right. Okay, thanks a lot, Stephanie. I'm going to go over to Meg right now. You did a couple of stories about a real heroin crisis. We're seeing a surging number of overdoses. What's going on?
We have, well, of course, we have a national problem. I mean, President Obama has talked about that. It's epidemic levels. But we have, not only do we have an epidemic of heroin use in the New Orleans area, but why we were seeing more overdoses is because the latest batch that came in was mixed with fentanyl. And what fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is much, much more powerful. And basically what happens when you have any opioid, when it hooks to the receptors, your brain will not tell your body to take the next breath. And that's what an overdose is. You might not necessarily die if someone gives you CPR or gets you in time to the hospital, but they could see these batches coming up in certain areas of the city. And while it was coming up in Claiborne, Elysian Fields, you know, 7th Ward, some downtown, some New Orleans East, the head of the FBI, the former SAC who just left and went to Chicago, told me, he said, we are seeing suburban mothers in their SUVs drop their children off at school, drive into the city, get their heroin and go back. It crosses all race, gender, you know, how much money you make, the whole spectrum of people are addicted. And one of the issues is that we had so many people addicted to prescription opioids, oxycodone, that type of thing. And then there was a crackdown on it, so it was harder to get, more expensive. And so heroin's cheap, it's available on the street, and some people are addicted the first time they use it.
I know where it comes in from.
The second largest place where it comes in from is Mexico. And unfortunately, a lot of people thought after Katrina, oh, we're going to have fewer, you know, drug problems, people selling drugs. But people in the New Orleans area who went to Houston, they made contacts. There's now like a bigger business, if you will, of getting it through, you know, the I-10, I-12 corridor to here.
Well, healthcare providers have really set up the alarm, and they also have said, look, if you have a problem or know someone who does have a problem with heroin use, here's some medication, here's something that you can do, sort of an antidote. Come get it from us. Can you explain what that is and how they can get it?
It's Naloxone, or under the brand name Narcan, and basically what it is it's a spray of medicine. You do it quickly up the nose. It knocks the heroin off that opioid receptor, well, all the opioid receptors, and it sticks to it so your breathing will come back. So you can breathe, you get yourself, or someone gets you to the hospital right away, because you're still going to need treatment. But it gives you that window of until you get help where you're going to take your next breath. And they're seeing so many, the increase is so huge in people who are overdosing, and not everybody dies from overdose. Although there have been a lot of people who have. Some people get to the hospital, they may have brain damage because they weren't breathing, or they may have other problems from it. But they at first and toward the beginning of January, they said, okay, we have it now, because we never had it, and it was only at the pharmacy in UMC. One pharmacy, the Walgreens, the outpatient pharmacy in UMC. Get a prescription. Then it kept increasing in January. They said, okay, no prescription. Family members, loved ones, you live with someone who has this disease of addiction, you don't need a prescription. You just go to the window, it's $30 to $50 depending on your copay. Keep this there, so if someone ODs, you can spray it up their nose and get them. And a lot of times they'll need a second and third dose. But the New Orleans EMS is using it like crazy. Now they can inject this naloxone, to help you start breathing again fast.
But they're giving the general public, though, at UMC. Is that the only place to get it?
That is the
only
pharmacy in the area, the outpatient Walgreens in UMC, where you can get it.
And just really quickly, let me ask you about treatment. I mean, what are we doing? This is a problem. People have a problem. That's why they're using these drugs. What treatment is out there?
Huge problem. We know completely that addiction is a disease. It is not a choice. We are not all created equally. Some brains are more likely to seek it out, to use it, to become addicted than other brains. It's just like all of us have a different propensity to get a diabetes or skin cancer or something like that. So the problem is that we don't have any inpatient treatment in Orleans Parish, public, and we do have resources, but not many. And for people who can pay, insurance doesn't, still has that where they're not going to pay. They rather pay for all the other problems you have rather than the addiction. Addiction, the reason why recidivism happens so frequently is because it's just like some people have cancer and the cancer comes back. Yeah. This is a hard illness because your brain has changed forever when you use.
Well, let me just say that you guys have a list of services or places where people can seek help on your website.
Yes.
WWL-TV.com.
Yes.
Right.
Let me say, just because it's kind of new to the local language, UMC is the University Medical Center. Okay.
Right.
Yes. Yes, the new hospital.
On Tulane and between Tulane and Canal, the brand new hospital.
Family members shouldn't beg, plead with their loved ones. Their brain is sick. They can't make the decision to go get treatment. They need to, at all costs, intervene, take them in to get treatment.
All right, Meg, thanks a lot. Real important story. We're going to go back over now to Errol. 10 years ago, the decision was made, we are going to have Mardi Gras.
Yeah, sometimes at periods like this, people see as Mardi Gras as being fun and trivial. There are some times in the history of Carnival where it might have saved the city. And I think 10 years ago was an example of that. 10 years ago, we were coming off of Hurricane Katrina, and there was a lot of debate about not having the parades. And it got really public when Ray Nagin went to Atlanta, and he was talking to some displaced New Orleanians, and this woman said, we shouldn't have parades. We don't have our homes yet. And Ray Nagin says, I agree with you. And Ray Nagin didn't take into account the TV cameras in the back of the room, nor did he take into account that the TV cameras were feeding to the TV stations in New Orleans. And so that night, I remember particularly Channel 4 led off their 10 o'clock news with Ray Nagin saying, we shouldn't have carnival parades. Well, that caused quite a buzz in the community. And there was legitimate debate. It wasn't just about having parades. I mean, there were some people who were afraid that if we didn't have it, then the message I'd go out to the world is that New Orleans is just so down and out.
It was the 6-month anniversary of Katrina, so all the news organizations were going to take messages away from it.
We were still a global media headquarters.
Well,
remember,
and everybody outside the world still thought we were underwater.
Yeah, now there were other people who said, but if we have the parades,
we'll look frivolous.
Then people will want to help us.
Yeah.
But I think the prevailing mood was that we need this just for ourselves, to prove this, to to ourselves. And so there was a good bit of debate. And I think a decisive moment was the crew of Zulu, because, of course, a lot of the victims were black, and Zulu says, we're parading. I mean, we want to do this. We want to be part of, we think we should have Mardi Gras. And so I think that helped open the door for everybody else. But there was a lot of meetings with the crews, and they all wanted to do something. Some crews were fairly battered, and so what you had was combination crews that paraded, and I remember some of the floats had blue tarp on them, just like just like the roofs did. That Saturday night of all nights, the weather was bad, and Endymion had to postpone. But it was going to parade, and so it paraded that. Imagine on a Sunday night, Endymion parading after Bacchus along the Uptown route, which may have been the longest parade night ever. In fact, I think they're just finishing that.
There was a traffic light
right now.
It took me 4 hours to get home.
It was a long night. But Mardi Gras, the day itself, the temperature was 76 degrees, totally blue skies. The Rex organization went all out to put up a complete parade. And Rex has those old type wooden spoked wheels, and a lot of those got damaged, and they had to actually look for wheelwrights around the country and bring wheelwrights in to fix. But they put together 100% parade. And I remember Paul McElhenney of Tabasco was Rex that year, and that Gallier Holly made this wonderful speech about let's all get together. I mean, we're coming back. But I think that Mardi Gras did so much to get New Orleanians to believe in them, to believe in themselves, and it got national attention. And I think people still knew that we had serious problems here, but it was very good. And it reminded me just really quickly of the police strike in '79, where there weren't any parades because of the police strike, and then the strike fell apart the day before because there wasn't any more leverage. But that day, New Orleanians just worked extra hard to have a good time. And I think it was also good at proving to ourselves that we can still function as a community.
That's right. We return to normalcy.
People don't realize outside of New Orleans that this is a huge money-making business for the people who make the costumes, the people who do the makeup. There are people who make their living year-round, and people needed to get back to work and have a salary.
Right, and enjoy our culture too. And we were definitely ready for Mardi Gras. Okay, thanks a lot, Errol. I'm going to go over to Future Watch now and Dawn, and we have been seeing more and more, it would seem, of people standing on street corners begging for money.
More and more panhandlers, and I talked to Kurt Weigel at the DDD, and he said you expect to see that in downtowns. Across the country, you expect to see it in downtowns. In New Orleans, it's spreading well beyond the boundaries of downtown, and you say why? Plain and simple, because it works. Meg said before we were even taping, she's heard from some folks who work with the homeless community that people can stand on our street corners and make $300 a day because we're a generous lot who gives. And both the DDD and the City of New Orleans say, please do continue to be generous, but be generous in the right way. Give to the organizations that help these folks. Give directly to Unity of Greater New Orleans, which helps with mental health counseling and addiction counseling, which a lot of these folks have. There are beds available in homeless shelters. The vast majority, and it's hard to know what the majority is, of these folks are not homeless to begin with. They do go home, and they go home with a lot of cash in their pocket. One of my questions is, I'm riding around with children in the car. I want to teach the right message to be giving, but what do you tell your children or your neighbors who say, oh, this poor guy on the street corner, to give to another organization and to tell your kids, look, we do give to help that man, but the best gift to him might not be the dollars he doesn't know how to spend wisely. It's to an organization that can help. Where are they from? All over. Some are local. Some came to New Orleans for work right after Katrina. Some still are coming in for the promise of a job and they run out of money, or they get head up against an addiction and end up finding themselves on the corner. Some come for the way of life because it's a fun place to live and they can do well working on a street corner. So it's a variety of folks who are out there. There are ordinances on the books, especially in the downtown area, to prohibit aggressive panhandling. Which means panhandling that can make you or me or whoever else is driving around feel scared. They're not supposed to be in groups of more than one, so that it's not a group that can gang up on you. They're not supposed to be out begging you after dark or before sunrise in the morning. So between really the hours of 7 p.m. and 6 a.m., not near a sidewalk cafe or near an ATM. So the city asks that you please call and report it if you're seeing problems like this, because it can, it's bad for business, but it also can be frightening for people who are out spending their money appropriately in the city.
Well, some of them almost seem like they're organized. Like you see this.
Some of them are.
This same type of cardboard sign that they're all holding.
For lack of a better word, there are pimps who put these folks out on the street corners and take a portion of their proceeds each day and put them out. The city and the DDD are working together on what's called a low-barrier homeless shelter, which hopefully will help not just the homeless population, but this group of folks kind of get the help they need and get in and get counseling and get clean and get jobs.
What does that mean, low barrier?
Low barrier means you don't have to follow to go to a homeless shelter. You usually have to be drug free and this free and that free and go in. You can get in and you can get yourself clean and have access to a bed and get care. And
we see so many of them with dogs too. Is there?
I think that just gets
they like dogs
more. No, it gets you to want to help even more. It's a good marketing campaign.
No, suppose the theory is that the police won't take you away if you have a dog, and so that's why a lot of them have a dog.
Right. Okay, Dawn, thanks a lot. Over to Stephanie, back over to Stephanie now. And of course, you know, the state is facing an enormous budget problem. We have a very successful program that people really, really want. It's called TOPS.
It is.
But it's getting really, really expensive.
Really expensive. People love it. It's a victim of its own success. I mean, we all know many people who rely on it, of course. It's named after Patrick Taylor, the late oil man, who actually started it as a privately funded program aimed specifically at low-income students. It has been taken. It was taken over by the state many years ago. It was expanded. There used to be income limits; those have been eliminated. The academic limits have been dropped. So it really is just a very broad-based tuition assistance program. What it does is it pays tuition at state colleges if you meet a certain, certain academic requirements. What has happened in recent years is that because state direct aid, we've all heard a lot about this, state direct aid to colleges has been reduced so much, the colleges have had to increase tuition. When you increase tuition, you increase the cost of TOPS because TOPS reimburses tuition. One of the things the legislature has tried to do is say, you know what, we're going to put a little break in there. So next time when tuition goes up, TOPS maybe doesn't automatically go up. There needs to be some sort of legislative approval or something like that. They tried that last year when we were first confronted with this huge budget crisis. Governor Jindal vetoed it, actually. Very, very popular program, hard to hit it, but hard to go at it. But one of the things that's come out in research is, it is not necessarily helping the people that Patrick Taylor originally set out to help. It really is, there are a lot of middle-class people, as we know. Over half the recipients, their families make over $70,000. We did a story at The Advocate not long ago that was interesting. There's been kind of a real building boom around LSU's campus. The feeling is that's a lot of TOPS money. That's a lot of money that families don't have to pay for tuition. So, they're building these nice apartment complexes. So it's good for the economy. But again, it's become something of an entitlement, for lack of a better word, and it's very hard to take that away. People have planned on it.
Well, what's going to be done to keep this sustainable?
They're going to try again this year, and Governor Edwards actually is more supportive of, again, limits, but really tinkering at it because it's, so many people depend on it. And, one thing that's interesting in the statistics also is it doesn't benefit every state school equally. LSU has lots and lots of students who are on TOPS, so they have, it's been scary. They've lost a lot of professors, but they have weathered this budget crisis somewhat well. Then you have some of the historically black colleges where, you have many fewer students who qualify, and, it's really hurting their bottom line, and it's hurting these students. It's making it very difficult for them to stay in school.
Okay, well, it's something that'll be coming up in this legislative session.
Absolutely.
Right?
And again and again until we figure it out.
All right, Stephanie, thanks a lot. Back over to Errol now. More carnival and satire.
I'm still getting used to hearing people refer to Governor Edwards. It's like,
what?
He's back? Okay, all right.
You have an image in your mind.
There's been a tradition of satire in Mardi Gras, and it's actually grown over the last few years, and it's probably about 5 crews or so that are doing satire. And by far, my own unofficial observation is that the most satirized topic this Mardi Gras is the whole Mayor Landrieu and the monuments thing at the national level. Stephanie, who's been keeping her own count, says at the national level, Donald Trump.
Robert Lee and Donald Trump. Who would have thought a year ago? These would be our targets.
Uptown construction, too.
And Uptown construction. And Evergreen,
but anyway, 2 of the best satirical crews are Chaos, which paraded last night and is a descendant of the old Moments organization, which started satire back in the 19th century. And then tonight, as we speak, La Coup d'Etat, which does some really creative satire. And so we just wanted to show some of the illustrations of some of the slides, beginning with Chaos. This is their title was Chaos Theory, and this is the Big Bang Theory, and here's the police chief. This one actually really isn't funny, but it kind of just draws attention to what the problems is that the police faces with the manpower shortage and being underfunded in various things. So that was the Big Bang. And there was reference to the robbery at Patois, where you can all you can grab buffet. And so, and some of these things you got to remember, this is just satire, just moving on.
Okay, Errol, we have about 2 minutes left to take a look at these.
If they could just
bring up our next one. There we go.
Okay, this would be replacement theory. This is Les Miles and the whole thing when he was about to be fired, and instead he wound up, they kept him and just making a ton of money. And one reason they didn't fire him because they had more than $15 million. But there was also that famous incident when Les Miles was shown on TV eating some grass on the side, just nibbling grass. And so here they have him nibbling on dollar bills. Substitution theories. Here you go with the monuments thing. Here they suggested, if y'all remember the late Frank Davis, they suggest replacing that to Jefferson Davis, like the Frank Davis Monument, having Spike Lee Circle, and the Yeah You're Right League. Okay, this is vacuum theory. All the importance that's placed on the United States, and the United States is getting tired, and all the people that it needs to carry. And Putin, in illustrations, universally, is always shown bare-chested now, ever since he went out right there. And so here's the United States just trying to pull the wagon and getting tired. And then next, this is
d'état.
This is Le Coup d'Etat. They use a game. A theme, and this is Trivial Pursuit. And if you see it to the left, you see Little King Mitch, and you see across the side different questions. How do you fight crime? Answer: take down the monuments. How do you fix the street? Take down the monuments.
About 20 seconds left.
Okay, this is Where You At. It's sort of like a spoof on St. Bernard Parish. Y'all don't be offended. They're just having fun with St. Bernard Parish. Okay, go ahead. Fantasy football. This is Tulane, all right, with winning records and getting all the
beating Bama.
Fantasy.
Yeah, Tulane beats Bama 52-7. Tulane wins the championship.
This is more in the restaurant. The other
here we go again with the restaurants. The restaurants really hit hard at the people who do the satires.
Well, I hate to bail out of this, but we're going to have to because we're running out of time. So people hopefully are enjoying all of these wonderful floats tonight.
And the Advocate has been doing a good job of doing these daily bulletins with all the parades. And so if you want to see more of these, you can just look at the Advocate.
Yeah. Okay, time to look ahead.
Okay, well, speaking of Carnival, on Rex's parade this coming Tuesday, they're doing a theme about royal gardens, but one of the floats, number 23, is going to be about the botanical gardens in City Park. And one of the gifts of the botanical gardens is the Enrique Alvarez sculptures. And the centerpiece of that float is going to be a recreation of an Alvarez sculptures. It's a beautiful float.
Beautiful, beautiful. Meg.
The City Council or some members of the City Council are looking into lowering the penalties for the New Orleans Police Department, also to make the decision on marijuana when they catch people with marijuana. There is study after study after study that show there's sound evidence that smoked marijuana is very harmful. It changes the brain. There's even evidence now that when you smoke it, future generations could be affected and more likely to use heroin because their brain is changed.
Okay, Meg.
Back to real business in New Orleans. Next month, Entrepreneur Week comes back with all sorts of business-savvy ideas. That's the week of March 11th.
Okay, Steph.
Another type of business. We're finally seeing a lot of presidential candidates start to drop out. Our Senate race is going the opposite direction. Everybody's getting in. We're now up to 6 candidates as of this week, and more to come. This is for the fall election to replace David Vitter.
Okay, thanks. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for joining us. I want to wish you a very happy, safe Mardi Gras, and we'll see you next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.